I took the firing pins out and I put them down on the ground and stepped on them. They never got, I don't think they ever found them. I destroyed like a bolt, a locking mechanism. I told them I needed a hammer to hammer them out. And so I battered them up. They could never use them parts. They rebuilt B-17s from crashes. And they had, I don't know how many they had flying, but they put them together just like they were built out of crashed planes. And they had the guns in them and ammunition. I've heard it said that they took off and flew with the Americans. Of course, they get up there, they can shoot down another B-17. They kept talking about the beer. They loaded all them guns on the truck, told me to get in. And they drove little ways and parked, and they said, come. We went to a pub. Chairman says, you sit in the corner and don't speak. And they bought me a beer. And that's the only beer I had in Germany.
Stalag Luft IV, meaning Sky Prison 4, was located near what is now Tykau in northwestern Poland. Only 1 quarter completed, it was opened on May 12, 1944. The first prisoners there were 64 arrivals that came on May 14th. Sergeant Bailey arrived just 1 month later. By October of 1944, the camp was holding 7,089 Americans, 606 British, and 280 other Allied personnel. This was well over the capacity of 6,400 that the camp was designed to hold. The barracks were not built well and offered little insulation from the elements. Non-commissioned officers were not required to work, but they were left with nothing to do. Stalag Luft IV had no forms of entertainment or recreational facilities.
There's the entertainment. You can walk around. Somebody measured it and they said it was 1 kilometer around. And you had to stay in they had a little guardrail. You had to stay 10 feet away from the fence. So that's, it was almost continually somebody walking for exercise. But we didn't have anything to do. The guys tried making baseballs, and some of them guys put a lot of work into them, sewing them all up by hand, and then they can use a bed slat for a bat. Well, you hit one of them baseballs about twice and then fall apart. I made a deck of cards. The other guys laughed at me. They said that you wouldn't work. I no more than got them all made once if I wanted to borrow them. They playing poker. They had to make a special rule about snowballs. No snowballs are to be thrown while officers are in the area. They'd have roll call. As soon as it said dismissed, everybody made snowballs. Well, there was 2,500 men in there. You can imagine the air was full of flying snowballs.
While the men had nothing to do, they still had to be mindful of not revealing classified information. The Germans were closely listening to all conversations between POWs and breaking up any large groups.
Well, you couldn't trust them. We call them stooges and so on. We always thought that they were looking for information. Some of the guards had been in the United States. I remember there was one, I think his name was Rosenthal. They called him Rosie. But he understood English. He hung around. Germans that were walking around inside the gate, they were always listening. They one called Rosie. Somebody slipped a pack of cigarettes into his coat. And then they reported that he'd stolen cigarettes. So it was said that he was shipped off to the Russian front. Whether it was true or not, I don't know. But I know they planted the cigarettes on him.
On February 6, 1945, the evacuation of Stalag Luft IV began. It was said that the Russians were advancing less than 30 miles away, so the camp was evacuated quickly.
I couldn't hear them, but they claimed they could hear the guns at night.
And the infamous march westward began. The men marched in groups day after day.
Sometimes we couldn't even get water. Sometimes no food. Sometimes you get a few potatoes from the farmer. We slept in sheds and barns.
Already malnourished and starving from their time in Stalag Luft IV, these men began an ordeal that would be hard on any healthy man in good shape.
And sometimes there was no shed or barn handy while we had to sleep outside. It wasn't bitter cold, but it was cold.
There was widespread cholera and other diseases from bad water and a never-ending exposure to the winter.
Especially like in March, it's damp, rainy more than snow. You know, you walk all day and your blanket is soaking up water. It ain't much help at night. 50 to 75 men in a group, different number of guards, anywhere from 3 or 4 to maybe half a dozen. It varied. Usually be at least one with a dog. There was one that spoke pretty good English. He carrying a rifle in one hand and he got the dog on a leash with the other hand. Well, how's he gonna light his cigarette? So he gives me the leash of the dog. He said, "You lead the dog, and I'm gonna have a smoke." So I led the dog. And 2 or 3 times I had to lead the dog. And one day we walked 22 miles, and nothing to eat all day. It got to be 11 o'clock at night and no place to sleep. So we slept in an orchard. That was pretty cold that night. But we walked everywhere you go in Germany. They've got that pillow stones. So you counted how many kilometers you walked and then changed it to miles. 22 miles is a long ways with nothing to eat. We usually got a piece of back bread for breakfast, and that was it. We couldn't count on anything else. They'd tell us that the water was good. They knew it was good, but most of it they didn't know whether it was good or not. Had a lot of trouble with cholera. In fact, we got shots for cholera. But I think we walked 84 days We covered 600 miles.
After enduring 84 days of marching and losing 50 to 60 pounds from lack of food, Sergeant Bailey and the other POWs met a British lieutenant, who told him and the other prisoners to wait. After a day of waiting, Sergeant Bailey decided to walk westward and was joined by a half-dozen other POWs. They took over a German truck at one point, and after walking the rest of the way, encountered more British. Sergeant Bailey was sent to a hospital in Belgium, where he recovered before being sent to a recovery Allied military personnel camp, Camp Lucky Strike, near Le Havre, France. There he was interviewed and given shelter, as well as reunited with his crew, all of which had survived the war. Sergeant Bailey returned to the United States after more than a year away on a Liberty ship, the Sea Robin, made to carry 1,800 servicemen. 2,400 men crowded aboard for their long-awaited voyage home. After being discharged from the United States Army, Mr. Bailey moved to East Haddam and raised a family there. He had 2 daughters and a son. His son, at the time of this film's production, just retired after serving 30 years in the United States Air Force.